the Mad Painter, get to paint you a picture of history that most never get to see. Howdy, folks. I hope y'all are having a good evening. I'm having an excellent one. It's Monday night. That means I get to get on here with my buddy Mark, and we get to tell you some stuff that even we surprise us, don't we, Mark?
That's right. That's always look forward to this time of the week.
I'll tell you what, I think we got an interesting show coming up tonight. But before we get to it, I want to remind everybody we are totally listener supported, so come to the homepage, which is www.freedomslips.com, and come into the chat room and say howdy. There's a bunch of people in there, and there's always good conversation going on in there. And it's Karen's birthday, and I want to say happy birthday to her.
Happy birthday, Karen.
All right, Mark. I ran my mouth for a good 2 minutes.
Okay. Well, yeah, might as well just get started with our guest, since he has a lot of information to discuss. So, yeah, we've been covering pyramids for the last couple weeks, and we're going to continue with a new guest to an open canvas. So I'm really looking forward to hearing our guests, providing some if there's corroborating evidence with the previous week's guests, or will he be introducing some new material? So we will find out over the next couple hours. So we're going to be learning from a researcher who has been to Giza and the Great Pyramids. So please welcome Stephen Myers to the show. Welcome, Stephen. How you doing?
Very good. Thank you for having me on the show. I appreciate it.
Yeah, it's kind of just due to the Global Pyramid Conference going on, and we were trying to help to promote the wide variety of interesting speakers that's going to be coming up this weekend. It's just by coincidence and availability that you were able to join us tonight, and I just want to continue the discussions on the enigmas of Giza. So you've actually been there.
You have to look up that word.
Yes, yeah, I've been to Giza over there in Egypt. Beautiful area. There's no place in the world like Egypt, and the Giza Plateau is probably one of the most mysterious places on Earth.
So, why were the pyramids built there? That might be a good starting point. Is why at that location? Why not 5 miles north, 10 miles south? Something like. Why was that location chosen?
Well, certainly every researcher and author has their own ideas, because everyone has the same direct physical evidence to analyze and make assessments of. And my assessment for the reason why the Great Pyramid was built where it was built is because it fit the wants, needs, and desires of the builders. That was what they wanted to do, and that's what they did, was build the Great Pyramid right where it was built.
Okay. And do you think that that 33-degree latitude played a role in the positioning of the pyramids?
Certainly, that's an idea that people have bandied about. Some people have said that that type of thing. But it would be nice if there was some sort of corroborative evidence that the builders intended some sort of significance for some kind of a 33-degree latitude, but I'm not sure that there is any corroborative evidence to indicate that was their intent.
What you're trying to refer to, Mark, is you think maybe it's possibly that these are built on top of ley lines of some kind, power nodes
Yeah,
of an earth grid or something?
could be something like that. I'm just throwing out a question because you do hear it on other shows.
Mm-hmm. Oh, certainly. And you hear ideas about this power grid or ley lines or anything like that. And people talk about that, but it's you have a power grid. I got an expensive electric bill every month, and sure like to reduce my electric bill with these ley lines.
Yeah, like to live on one of them, huh?
Well, it'd be nice. I mean, my question about ley lines is the builders of the Great Pyramid went to a lot of effort to build that great big building. What advantage to them was building it on a node of a ley line? Did it help anybody? Did it cure cancer? Did it reduce somebody's electric bill?
That's a good point.
Yeah. What advantage was it if it was an advantage on these ley lines? Has ley lines helped anybody?
I don't know.
They continually built. Yeah, they continually built religious edifices on these lines, and
that's what I've heard.
So there got to be some kind of significance to them.
I think with our guests last week, we kind of got into modern people have lost that ability to feel the earth energy. I don't know. Maybe there's nothing to it at all. I don't know.
Well, I sure wish that someone could figure it out, because I have a friend who drives a long-haul truck, and he spends a lot of money on energy. And if these ley lines are an energy system, let's figure this out. But they could also be just something that somebody made up.
Oh, okay. So that we'll have to save maybe for the second hour the idea of researchers seeing what they want to see.
Okay.
But that you made some good points about that too. But we'll save that for later in the show. But one of the interesting things about your video video series is the animations about the locks and dam system to get these stones to the pyramid. Could you explain how that worked?
Yes. I contend that the Great Pyramid was built using water locks, like those in the Erie Canal, or locks in England has a lot of water locks, or like the Panama Canal. That technology was used to build the Great Pyramid. They moved stones on barges from the Nile River up a series of water locks all the way up to the building site. And imagine, if you will, the first stones of the Great Pyramid that were set in place were the first layer of the casing stones. And that would make a wall, a square wall, around the building site. If you fill that up with water, and you could have barges go all the way from the Nile all the way up into that pond. So then they would move right to where the interior stone would go, move it from the barge down into the pond. And when that pond was filled up with stones, then the first layer of the Great Pyramid was completed. And that process would continue as depicted in our video series, which is at our website, which is thepump.org. And you can watch our video series for free. And that process continued all the way up, level by level, until the Great Pyramid was completed.
Okay, you know, if you fly a drone overhead, are you able to see if there's where the locks were located, or is that
Yes.
filled in with this sand?
Uh, there's a lot of debate as to the location of the Nile River, eons ago.
Mm-hmm.
Also, the encroachment of civilization has altered the terrain and the topography. But the water locks, we think, were incorporated in the casing stones. They were built into the casing stones, if you will, and the casing stones were cemented together watertight. So, and the few remaining casing stones are still cemented together watertight.
Okay, and yes, some of your uh, evidence is based on what Herodotus wrote about seeing the pyramids.
Yeah, yeah. Herodotus, 5th century BC historian, went to the pyramids, and he was told by what he called priests, which were probably tour guides, about the pyramid. And they said that it was built level by level, and that there was a machine at each level. And we think that machine was a water lock. He also said that he was told that they used short wooden planks in the machines. Most people have interpreted that as being levers, but you can't lever a 70-ton payload into place. So, but the water locks would often have short wooden planks for their doors. So that's just an interesting thing that Herodotus said. Herodotus also said that there was an artificial duct connected to the Great Pyramid that could have been for water. Who knows? Things have changed on the Giza Plateau throughout the centuries, and a lot of the original evidence has been destroyed. And we're looking at the Great Pyramid as a puzzle with many pieces missing.
Okay, and is like how far was the quarry from the Great Pyramid? When Chris Dunn was on, he was talking about the different ways of cutting the uh, stones. I forget, what he said about how far they were transported, but we hear, the Stonehenge stones were transported great distances to be put at the Salisbury Plain. How far are they barging the stones from the quarry site?
Some of the largest stones were moved 400 miles. They were
Wow.
located south from the Giza Plateau, and all researchers acknowledged that they were barged down the Nile River, downstream, which would be up or north, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so our research just says that they kept the stones on the barges and moved those stones on barges all the way up to the building site. Egyptology, which abhors the scientific method, has never moved a payload of 70 tons 1 inch. They've never done it. And also, they've never moved a stone around the corner of a spiral ramp. And of course, they've never made a casing stone with the extreme precision. And their one reason is their stories are unworkable. It's impossible to do it the way Egyptologists say it was done. So the quarries for the fine limestone for the casing stones is across the river. So all researchers acknowledge that barges were used in the construction of the Great Pyramid.
Oh, so there were two separate quarries where the stones came from.
Yes. Also, the rough cut interior stones, some have suggested that the quarry for those was very close to the Great Pyramid. So very near Giza. So there were several quarries. It was quite an operation, like when we build a hydroelectric dam type of thing. It's a big operation that requires certainly a lot of logistics to accomplish the task of building the Great Pyramid. And that would also include a method to move many heavy stones in a very quick manner. Water locks are extremely fast, and also the 21st century choice technology to move our heaviest objects. In fact, the Panama Canal is being expanded with another series of water locks. And the reason why they're using water locks in the 21st century is because it is a 21st century high technology to move our heavy objects. And in ancient times, they had a great big construction project, and they used water locks to move their stones to build the Great Pyramid.
So yes, Stephen, it's really amazing how in the 19th century, America started building all the canals across the country.
Yes.
It's nothing. That's nothing new. That was done 4,000 years earlier.
I think so.
Yeah, just the technology you're talking about is fascinating.
Do you know how much? Do you know how much water would be required to do what you were?
Yes, I do. It probably takes, let's just say, about 10 times the weight of a payload to move stones through a water lock, the weight of water compared to the weight of the payload, let's just say. So it would take 700 tons of water, rough averages, to move a 70-ton payload through a water lock.
Now, and what you were proposing is they built these water locks up the side of the pyramid as it was being built?
Yes. Each level had its own water lock, if you will, to put it in simple terms. And it was incorporated right into the casing stones. The water lock was setting on top of the level of casing stones below it. And the casing stones were watertight. And in fact, the bonding agent is known for being stronger than the stone itself. And that's not to keep the pesky Egyptian rain out, but to keep water in during construction.
Yeah, Stephen, were there different stones seen as having special properties?
Yes. Different stones have different properties, that's for sure. On a technical level, they used excellent quality, extremely high quality casing stones for the exterior. And I think that is because they needed a watertight wall around the Great Pyramid, the casing stones themselves, and they were cemented together. The cement had special properties, which was that it was very strong. And they used some, other things. The rough-cut interior stones had a special property, which was that they were probably cheaper and lower quality stones, and they used that for the interior.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know, when you say special properties, do you mean like magic or something like that?
Yeah, that was where I was going with it. Was yeah, they're was it like electronic transferring abilities through some of these stones?
There has been other researchers who say that some of the stones, specifically in the King's Chamber, have a high degree of quartz in them. And quartz is like we're used in crystal radios and all of that stuff. And that if you vibrate quartz like a tuning fork, you know, you can get energy or whatever. But those stones are still there. And the reality is you can't get energy from them. A lot of the stones, like the ceiling stones of the King's Chamber, they have tons of weight on each end of them, so they're not like a tuning fork. They're not vibrating. You get my drift?
Okay.
You know, there's no, like, you can't, like, if you put your tongue up against them, you won't get shocked. Okay. They also use the piezoelectric effect on a record player. You know, probably there's people that have heard of record players, us older people, but that it creates such a little tiny bit of electricity that it has to be amplified. So to make a great big pyramid that kind of produces a teeny tiny bit of energy, maybe, it is kind of, you know, something to consider.
So if the King's Chamber did not have electrical properties, then would there not have been a pharaoh built or been buried in the King's Chamber? I think maybe they would see the electrical energies as, you know, something to do about the afterlife.
Well, that's a nice story about the pharaoh's body being buried in there, but
that's what they said.
People say that, but it'd be nice if there was evidence for that.
Okay, so we're kind of getting to the point of, then, if there wasn't a pharaoh entombed in there, what was the point of the building the Great Pyramid?
Well, there's, you know, every researcher has his own assessment of the same direct physical evidence that everybody has. There's no hidden evidence or anything. And that's what we can go by, is like the real evidence, not, you know, like the pharaoh's body, no evidence of it. There's no writing to indicate that there's no king's list or anything in the Great Pyramid, no Book of the Dead, nothing like that. So we can just go by the same direct physical evidence. But I think that the Great Pyramid was infrastructure that, like Christopher Dunn thinks it was a machine. I think that it was a working machine, that it actually did something. It served a purpose instead of just being a great big tomb marker so the grave robbers would know where to go. I don't think that's what it was. But I think it was infrastructure that turned the desert into a garden, that it turned poverty into prosperity, that it was the machine that did all that because it was built to be a functioning and massive water pump.
Okay. So
I wrote 2 books about that. The first book is called Lost Technologies of the Great Pyramid, and you can get it on Amazon.com. But it is about how the Great Pyramid was assembled. And my second book is called The Great Pyramid Prosperity Machine. Instead of a building for the dead, it was a building for the living, and it provided prosperity by being a water pump.
So when researchers talk about the was it like salt stains on the ceiling of the different shafts, subterranean shafts,
Mm-hmm.
you're saying that there is evidence for those kind of chemicals being on the ceiling because it was a machine.
The Queen's Chamber was quite notable for having a lot of deposits on the walls. And those deposits in the last couple of hundred years have been cleaned off when the pyramid has been cleaned up, if you will. And but there was like a half-inch thick. We think that part of the pumping process caused those deposits to be deposited on the Queen's Chamber and the lower part of the Grand Gallery. So yeah, it's part of the operational process of the Great Pyramid water pump.
Okay, this is one of the points of the show where your information is really changing the traditional perception of history and the building of the pyramids. So, were these different shafts for all part of the hydraulic process? Like, is one shaft used for to let air in, and water is being sprayed out of the other shaft? Is that how it's working?
No, it's pretty complex. Just like
Okay.
the interior of the Great Pyramid is rather complex. There's like oddly shaped passages, multiple chambers, and that type of thing. So it's quite complex. But instead of there's all these chambers, but the pharaoh only had one carcass. So the idea of the Great Pyramid being a tomb doesn't really fit the direct physical evidence. But we think that similar to Christopher Dunn, only there are some distinctions, that hydrogen was produced in the Grand Gallery through electrolysis. There was water in the lower half of the Grand Gallery, and that hydrogen was ignited, which caused combustion. And that combustion, the result of that combustion was a very powerful vacuum which drew water up the Grand Gallery. My book, The Great Pyramid Prosperity Machine, talks about this in great detail. And then that water was allowed to move back down into the Queen's Chamber and work similar to a hydraulic ram water pump. But like I say, it's rather complicated. The output of the Great Pyramid water pump was the King's Chamber vents.
Yeah. Would there have been some kind of mechanism in that chamber that it would have helped with the dispersal of the water, or did it just like flood in there and then ooze out of some of the openings?
Yes, there was quite a bit of apparatus inside the Great Pyramid. Much of that has been destroyed through the eons. The antechamber between the Grand Gallery and the King's Chamber has slots, large slots, that at one time held stones, sliding stones. and we think that was part of valves. Also, ancient writers, Sabro and others, talked about a door that pivoted, a door on pivots, if you will, and we think that that acted similar to a check valve. And the door on pivots was like the part of the check valve that moved. So how do sliding stones and doors on pivots that are evidence of the Great Pyramid, how did that protect the Pharaoh's golden treasure?
It doesn't sound too effective.
No. Also, long open passages aren't really a very good protector of the Pharaoh's gold. So it's probably not a tomb.
Well,
Yeah, most people would agree with that for sure.
yeah,
Alternative people would, but if you go to the University of Boston, or if you go to any university in Europe, they're going to tell you that it's a tomb. There'll be people up at the front of the classroom that are Egyptologists and say it was a tomb. And then those people in the classrooms are going to graduate to be Egyptologists. And in the 21st century, they're going to say, oh, yeah, that precision stonework was done using hand tools, hammers and bronze chisels. And then somebody's going to say, well, why don't you demonstrate that and make a casing stone? And the entire science of Egyptology can't do that. They can't make one casing stone the way they say it's done in college, the way they say it's done in their books that they've written in the 21st century. So it's just an odd situation that we're in right now with Egyptology.
well, with some of the statues that some of our guests have discussed, there's all of the precision on some of the pharaohs' faces that are at just say Karnak and other temples, and the eyes, the left and right eye are exactly the same size. They're proportional, same distance from the center of the eye to the like ear. It's pretty hard to do that kind of precise sculpting without pretty high-tech equipment 4,000, 5,000 years ago.
Yes, the evidence indicates that the people of the Nile Valley in ancient times had some remarkable abilities to fashion stone, both in making ultra-flat surfaces, but also in making sculptures that are symmetrical. So can't be done using hand tools.
Yeah, I think you're making a convincing case that all these, like what you're talking about, the sliding stones, the long open passages could not have been a deterrent to the grave robbers. So we have to look at something, another function, and your information is enlightening that it should be seen as something else than a tomb.
I think it's a major construction project. It was infrastructure, like we have roads, the power grid, we have hydroelectric dams. The largest structure in North America is the Grand Coulee Dam, and it makes a lot of electricity, but it was also primarily built, that dam, for irrigation. The largest structure in North America is a water pump, and it pumps water, and it irrigates most of or much of eastern Washington, and has turned the garden or the desert into a garden. We eat apples that are irrigated with pumped water, and people don't realize it. So it's fascinating to think about. Certainly, the hydroelectric dams of today operate differently than the Great Pyramid water pump, but they both served a function of keeping people's bellies full and people knowing that they could eat tomorrow. That's prosperity.
Mm-hmm. No, it is. Well, if I understand, all the artifacts in the uh, museums correctly, that with all the pottery shards that have been found around the pyramid, they're obviously carrying something. Why wouldn't it be, uh, the prosperity such as, uh, you know, clean water, uh, vegetables? It just seems like there's,
Certainly.
yeah, there's, it seems like there, it has been documented a lot of pottery.
Certainly, there's a lot of pottery. There's a lot of stone that has been turned on a lathe type of thing.
Mhm.
Stuff that can't be recreated by Egyptologists, but technicians and machinists can see the tool marks and understand, certainly much better than Egyptologists, how this technology worked for turning stone vases and that type of thing. But I think that the ancient builders were geniuses. They weren't just one step out of the Stone Age, and they weren't knuckle draggers with building a great big ramp bigger than the Great Pyramid itself to haul stones using their big back muscles up this big ramp like a bunch of ants for 30 years or longer. If Egyptologists were responsible for building the Great Pyramid, it would have never been built.
Well, yeah, Stephen, what you're talking about with the lathes, now you probably get into some kind of boring mill was probably used for some uh, aspects of building. For example, the you know, like baffles or doors. So, for people talk about the uh, cutting wheels. Yeah, yeah. The information. Just you just mentioned about the lathes is another really good example of the high technology that was uh, seems like it was fairly commonplace thousands of years ago,
Oh, certainly.
and we're not giving them
Thousands of
credit
years
for it.
ago, they knew how they built the Great Pyramid, but Egyptologists are kind of confused on how it was built.
Well, how old do you think the pyramid actually is?
That's a great question. Actually, that's beyond the scope of my research. The focus of my research is not who built it or when it was built, but how it was built. To me, that's much more interesting subject and why it was built. You can debate for your whole career who built it. Doesn't really matter to me. It's like if you get in a car wreck and an ambulance comes, you don't really ask the driver who built the ambulance. You take advantage of the ambulance, and that's kind of what I want to do, is not figure out the name of whoever built it, but redevelop the ancient high technology for our modern but very troubled
Yeah.
world.
Well, you mentioned it as being a pump in order to make the area, kind of a garden spot. Actually,
Certainly.
12,000 years to 15,000 years ago, it was actually a jungle there.
Yeah. It was. Most people use the word savanna. I know that in Roman times, they could. I've read, I don't have the quote in front of me, but that the Roman soldiers could march from Rome all the way to Egypt in the shade. So there was, even in Roman times, there was a lot more, let's say, palm trees or whatever, and that may be a exaggeration. But and in ancient times, the weather was much different. That's for sure. But they still needed irrigation. You know, we have rain in the Pacific Northwest, but every farmer has a water pump on the edge of the river, and they pump water up to their farms. So still got to have that water. The Nile River inundates the whole land every year before they put the Aswan Dam in. But a one time yearly flood isn't enough for year-round irrigation, and and that's one reason why they built the Aswan Dam. They used the electricity from the Aswan Dam right there in the valley of the Nile for to make electricity, but also that electricity is used for irrigation. So modern people built a big structure with no ornamentation in the valley of the Nile to pump water. Ancient people built a big structure in the valley of the Nile to pump water. That's what I think.
Sounds plausible.
It sure does.
And Stephen, it has a few minutes ago we were talking about in it was the King's or Queen's Chamber. There would have been some kind of machine that has disappeared. Or have there been any fragments of some kind of machine found in those chambers, or in the area?
Of course. There is a well, if you will, that is at the bottom of the Grand Gallery, and the well shaft goes down to the grotto, and there's also a shaft that went from the grotto down towards the subterranean chamber. That whole passage and everything was full of debris, segments of rope, rock, and stone. All of that, it was cleared out in the 1830s and thrown over into the garbage heap. You know, it wasn't kept for meticulous study. But a lot of people didn't crawl up through the Great Pyramid and throw rocks down that thing. That was probably parts and pieces of the apparatus that is no longer there. In the Queen's Chamber, or the passage going to the Queen's Chamber, has a step, the horizontal passage. We think that step was originally part of the seat of a check valve. And my book, The Great Pyramid Prosperity Machine, talks about that. The Grand Gallery has slots with nothing in it and two large grooves up high that we think had part of some mechanism to help operate the water pump. Also, the King's Chamber has the sarcophagus, which we think was part of a float, similar to carburetors have a float in them. Even toilets have a float in them to operate. So, but the specifics of all of that, again, is in my book, and you know, it's a little bit technical, but I think you know, it's been well received. It has, you know, quite a few reviews on Amazon, that type of thing, and with our video series at our website at thepump.org, there's been a tremendous amount of interest. And most people say, or a lot of people tell me, it's compelling is the word that I hear, and it's at least thought-provoking. So we're having a lot of fun, and it's been an interesting journey.
You also have a Facebook page. That's how I run across you, was on Facebook.
Oh yeah, I got a Facebook page with all of that hype. You know, it's hard to keep track of everything. me being an older guy, but it's facebook.com, Stephen Myers, author, Myers, author. But you can go to thepump.org and then like us on Facebook, if you know what all that means.
Okay. Okay. Well, it's people. You know, your readers have commented that your books are compelling. I think you're doing that, verbally tonight. It's, this is just very interesting. And another, just to segue into something you just mentioned was the really large stones in the lower levels. I believe that they were much larger than any of the doors. So how did they get put there? Or they just built much earlier and everything else was built around them?
No, neither one of those options. It was built level by level. So when they got to the level, let's say, of the King's Chamber floor, they put that in. And then the next level would be the first stones in the walls of the King's Chamber. And they would put those in, and then put in the whole stones of the whole building, level by level, casing stones, interior stones, and the fine stones for the passages and chambers, level by level. Then when they got done with that, they would do the next level of the King's Chamber, along with all the stones in the whole pyramid, and ultimately get to the ceiling stones of the King's Chamber, really big stones. They didn't bring them up through the passages. You can't do that. It won't work in the real world. So they brought them in on barges, and we're using specialized barges, which is depicted in detail in our video series. They put the King's Chamber stones, the largest stones of the Great Pyramid, on top of the walls of the King's Chamber, and then the King's Chamber was completed. But it was built level by level, casing stones, interior stones, and the fine stones of the passages and chambers.
Okay.
Piece of cake.
Okay. So
That's what I was thinking when you were saying it. It sounded like he was building a cake.
Yeah. You know, the Erie Canal, when it was built, it was 4 feet deep, 4.5 feet deep, okay?
right.
The barges were designed to hold 70 tons of payload. And you could move 70 tons using the power of 20 100-watt light bulbs. The power you use for 20 100-watt light bulbs, you could move 70 tons. Okay?
Okay.
That makes sense to you?
Yeah.
20 100-watt light bulbs is 2,000 watts, which is 2 horsepower, let's say, roughly.
Mm-hmm.
And you can see pictures of towpaths along the Erie Canal with 2 horses pulling a barge that's moving 70 tons.
I used to live right on the Erie Canal.
Oh, I envy you. Oh, I'd love to
right,
go
right where it goes, right where it goes into the Niagara River.
Oh, wow, how fascinating! I envy you. But yeah, so and it was it changed our nation, the Erie Canal. I mean, it created so much wealth that it was incomprehensible by moving freight. They moved in the Erie Canal the freight in 2 years, the weight of the Great Pyramid, and they moved it higher than the height of the Great Pyramid. These are kids. They use kids on the Erie Canal. Little kids in the 1840s can move 70-ton payloads. Highly trained Egyptologists cannot move 70-ton payloads.
So
they don't tell you that in college.
they were doing something right with physics and mechanics.
Yeah, they were real world people that had a real goal to reach, and they reached it. Egyptologists are not that. They are storytellers that do not engage in the scientific method.
Do you find that now that uh, political changes have been made in Egypt, that there's more openness and uh, discussing uh, theories of non-mainstream researchers like you or Chris Dunn or some of the other guests we've had who've discussed their views of the Great Pyramids?
I would say that there's a little bit. There's just like a little crack, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
It's slow. It's very slow, and with it takes funerals, if you will, for new ideas to happen. They found the Piltdown skull, and the leading anthropologists instantly recognized it as a missing link. It took 40 years for leading world-class anthropologists to acknowledge the file marks on the skull. And the reason why it took 40 years, the people that wrote the books, the people that headed departments in colleges finally died off. And then the new generation of anthropologists said, "Oh yeah, the Piltdown skull, yeah, that's fake." But nobody changed their mind. The first generation went to their graves believing that it was a valid missing link. The next generation knew that it wasn't, but nobody changed their mind. So it's going to take generations, for people to change ideas.
Okay. Well, you do see that in
everything.
I was going to say the history textbooks, they are just, if you have a child, grandchild in high school, go through it. Maybe the history textbooks are going to reluctantly admit that Vikings came to the New World, but it was just like three of them, and then they went back real fast. And but they did leave that little, the Longhouse and Lonzo Meadows, and that they went home, but we still need to focus on Columbus.
Yeah, that's true. So it's a long journey for any type of change of plans. That's for sure. A change of ideas that people have. It takes generations, and it's too bad. But that's the nature of people. Once they learn something, then it's infinitely harder to unlearn it, even if it's false, than to change your ideas. People just don't do that.
Well, you see in fictionalized or 1984 might also could also be seen as a science fiction novel, but you get the lines about you say a lie often enough it becomes the truth.
Yeah, there's a lot of that. 1984 was a very repressive in their ideas. So maybe we're going to go back to the intellectual dark ages. Who knows? Who knows what the Vatican Library has that we're not allowed to find out. So it's a strange world, but there's people like myself and others that are pursuing an interest, if you will, or conducting independent research. And there are, small breakthroughs every now and again.
Well, it's encouraging what you said about, it's a small crack with the change in the Egyptian administration. Well, the crack might be large enough for you to just get your foot in the door. Maybe someone who's now, 15 years old, about 20 years, maybe they'll be able to find a little bit more evidence to open it a little bit more, and we can actually start finding more about
Some truth.
our real history.
True. It's funny. Our understanding of history certainly is changing, and one encouraging thing for me is I know very few people in their early 20s that actually believe like casing stones can be quarried to extreme precision using hand tools. They'll read it in books on Egyptology, and then they'll just say, no, that can't be done. People are just finally are understanding that because of the work of Christopher Dunn, talking about precision machining, and people like myself, I harp on that issue all the time. People just don't readily believe all of that stuff like they used to anymore.
Well, that's good. I'm glad.
It is good.
There's our break right here. Welcome back, folks. I hope you enjoyed the first half of the show. Like the promos say, we are totally listener supported, so if you got a buck or two, we'd sure appreciate it. Come on into the homepage and check out our archives, $5 a month, and get, 90 some hosts. You can't beat it. And there's some people out there charge $5 a month for their 1 hour show for a week. That's pretty sad, huh? But that's the truth. Okay, Mark, I'll let you have it back. I done my little blunder in there.
Yeah. Well, first hour seemed like it was about 20 minutes long.
Oh man, he's got some information, doesn't he?
Yeah, and another interesting aspect of the pyramids that comes up frequently now, and people are covering it in their books. It's kind of found in the desert Southwest. Is the this pattern of the Orion's belt. And Stephen, you really don't agree that there's the Orion's belt pattern built into the configuration of the pyramids. Could you explain that, please?
Well, a lot of people see correlations between anything you come up with, like between the Great Pyramid and the vents at one time pointed to certain stars, which they don't point to now, and other correlations between the speed of light and the Great Pyramid and everything else. And a correlation is wonderful between two things, but in legitimate academic research, you must have a separate piece of evidence that provides causation for the correlation. And oftentimes, certainly with the Great Pyramid, that's lacking. And in the world of legitimate academic research, they say that a correlation does not even imply a causation, like a relationship. So I certainly am a skeptic of the current orthodoxy surrounding the Great Pyramid about all of these correlations.
A lot of times you do see this Orion's belt pattern, he said in Arizona, uh, the in Mexico, but you don't think that it's what do you say, like symbolic of life originated it in the constellation or in the constellation Orion?
Well, it would be nice. Let's just what a lot of people do is they'll cherry pick information and data points from all over the world, okay, and then they'll compare them, and fiddle with the numbers, and then say Shazam, it's a correlation. Well, it's that's fine in religion and superstition, but not in academic research. So let's find out. Is there anything, let's say, about the Great Pyramid that has any feature that indicates that the builders intended any significance with Orion? Can you think of anything? The Great Pyramid is a pretty complex structure. Is there anything about it that indicates the builders intended a correlation to be significant with Orion?
I don't know. I can't think of anything specific. Just
Okay.
possible ideas. Nothing
Well,
concrete.
some people say, well, the vents point to certain stars that are important.
Yeah.
Well, they don't point to those stars anymore. So I could say the original builders intended that correlation to be temporary, and now it's null and void. That's what the evidence indicates. Because the stars move across the sky, the vents don't point to those stars. That all those charts you see on the internet, they don't point to those stars.
Yeah, well,
I could say that the vents, it was intended by the builders for the vents to point to the stars that they point to now, because they wanted to tell us something.
Yeah, now, where the stars
now.
are now.
Why now? Why not 500 years in the future? 500 years in the past? Well, it has to be now because of the Incan calendar. It ended on 2012. So the Incan calendar says 2012, so the vents must point to whatever they point to in 2012, so they can tell us something. See, I can make this stuff up all day.
Well, it's like
also the three pyramids on the Giza Plateau, they're not in a line. They're kind of offset,
Right.
Well, they're crooked. Well, maybe they are in a correlation with my dog's hind leg, because it's crooked too.
Yeah, I've read.
Hey, no, wait. It's not as stupid as it sounds. There's the Sirius star, the dog star is up there in the sky too. See, there you go. And the Great Pyramid predicted where our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ was going to be born. Before the Orion correlation theory, there was the biblical correlation theory. Yeah. See now, but all these guys now, they don't believe in the biblical correlation theory, even though those correlations are precise. So they just pick and choose whatever correlations they want, and then in reality, they worship them.
Kind of like shopping for your own theory.
Yeah, I'm actually writing a magazine article about the correlations between the Great Pyramid and Elvis Presley.
Okay.
And there's a bunch of them, because Elvis Presley is a complex figure with if you consider all of his movies, his wives and kid, and and you can do the math and figure out when he was born and on what latitude. And then pretty soon you've got the speed of light, so there'll be a correlation between that. And so, you can just make this stuff up all day long. Did you know there's no feature specific to the Great Pyramid which indicates the original builders had any intent of making a relationship between the Great Pyramid and Orion's belt? Even
No.
if the
I don't think it's written down anywhere that I know of. And there's no picture.
There's no feature.
You know?
There's no feature to indicate
Nope.
that the original builders intended any relationship between the Great Pyramid and the Book of the Dead. There's nothing to associate those two things together. But people do. They just say, "Oh, the Book of the Dead says this, and the Great Pyramid is such and such a height." And then they predicted the speed of light. Shazam! It's a correlation.
They didn't. You know, we didn't have. I didn't know the speed of light in miles. Miles didn't exist.
Yeah, I mean, and then a very telling question to ask these people is, can a Great Pyramid correlation be wrong? And that they're done. They're stumped. They won't say it. They're not allowed to. Their correlation god will not allow them to say it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, instead of the speed of light, maybe they were trying to tell us how many days there were in a year, and they got it wrong. Well, how do you know that that's not what happened? Well, it aligns with the speed of light. Well, a correlation that is precise is meaningless without something to indicate that that's the two things that have a relationship. There is a correlation between the number of pirates and global warming. And you can look it up on the internet. Famous correlation. There were a lot of pirates back in the 1600s. No global warming. Very few pirates now. And there's global warming, if you believe it. But there's charts, there's web pages, the Wikipedia talks about it, and very precise correlation between those two things. The only thing is, there's no causation.
Yeah,
everybody knows it's meaningless.
Yeah, one of the people I had been working with thought that the ridge above her house, is like a snake. Yeah, sure. That's the way mountains are usually formed. They, if you look at it from Google Earth, wiggles a little bit. And she was telling me that, ancient people built the mountain in the form of a snake, as if it were something like in imitation of the serpent mound. I was like, gee, I don't. That's kind of hard to imagine that many people digging that much dirt to build a mountain in the form of a snake. It just, and she was convinced, and so some of these people who come up with these theories have a real problem with reality.
Well, they have determined what is true for them in a method that's perfectly acceptable in the realm of religion. And I think the Orion correlation theory, with all of its logical fallacies, is actually a modern-day mystery religion. It has its high priests and those people who write the religious books that espouse this Orion correlation theory mystery religion. And there's people that read those books and believe what they read, and they talk about correlations, and there's no end to them. They compare, with the musical scale, human anatomy, and anything that they can come up with using any unit of measure, and something lines up. Shazam! It's a correlation. It's a religious experience, and that's why people, when you question the current orthodoxy of this Orion correlation theory, people get way bent out of shape and very mad, because in effect you're debating religion, instead of legitimate academic research. So it's a strange world. The biblical correlation theory still has proponents, and there's websites and everything else. It's called pyramidology, if you will, is another term for it, but I call it the biblical correlation theory. And you can see charts with precise correlations about when Moses wandered in the wilderness and the Great Pyramid predicted World War I kid you not, and the Pyramid Inch and all of that. So, but we live in a civilization that doesn't read the Bible like it used to, so now they've gone on to other things. And even if the builders of the Great Pyramid did worship Orion, that doesn't mean that every single building they built was a religious building. Is that fair enough? People
Right.
in the 1930s read the Bible, certainly more so than now. The Hoover Dam was built in the 1930s. Is it a religious building? No, it's not.
Yeah.
So even if religious culture built the Great Pyramid, it doesn't mean that it's a religious building. But you can assume that as an act of faith. But then you're back to religion instead of academic research. And the only issue I really have with the Orion correlation theory is that it is passed off as legitimate academic research instead of as a faith-based mystery religion. And the people that are proponents of the Orion correlation theory have decided to accept a series of logical fallacies using a leap of faith, and then they have a religion, and they are very religious people. But they just need to admit it.
Yeah, I'm sure you have seen a lot of the NASA photos of Mars, and there's the possible Sphinx in the background, but the photo isn't sharp enough to let the viewer clearly see if it's just a rock. So it's kind of everywhere. The face on Mars.
Still up for it's up certainly for debate, just like everything else. But in that instance, my opinion is let's conduct research. Let's we have endless money for wars, so we can get oil. I mean, because we live in a corporate socialist state. And so let's just use money to go to Mars and go find out about those pyramids, if that's what they are. Let's find out. Let's conduct research. I'm in favor of any kind of research. Pyramids supposedly up in Antarctica or wherever it is in the snow. We've seen pictures of that. Something. Let's go find out about it. So I'm in favor of research, but not necessarily complete leaps of faith to the point of having a whole religious dogma based on worshiping correlations without causation.
Okay. Another fascinating aspect of Egyptology is the I don't know what it's called, the tablet that's between the paws of the Sphinx that may indicate that there's a second Sphinx somewhere. Do you have an opinion on that? Is there evidence being found? Is that more pareidolia?
Well, no. It's there was a second Sphinx on that tablet, and that is actually direct physical evidence. I think that tablet has been damaged through weather and other issues, but if there's another Sphinx, let's conduct research. Let's do our archaeological digs and find out, instead of developing a lattice work of ideas built on supposition and conjecture. Let's find out the truth. That should be okay in the 21st century. So again, issues like that, I am in favor of research. In fact, I founded a nonprofit foundation to redevelop the ancient technologies of the Great Pyramid and make them available in modern times. And we have a small nonprofit. We are a 501c3, recognized by the federal government. Board of directors, advisors, co-researchers, and that type of thing. So I'm certainly in favor of research. And our current fundraising campaign is we are raising funds to buy a 3D printer for our research facility. We're about halfway there. So if somebody wants to donate, they can sure go to our website at thepump.org, and they can contribute to our crowdfunding effort to get a 3D printer.
Cool. And how would you, what would you make a 3D image of?
Oh, we would make a lot of things, but components to recreate the water pump we think the Great Pyramid was, using like PVC pipe and certainly check valves off the shelf, like at a plumbing store, but also some custom fabrication. And that pump would have to be fairly large, believe it or not, about 2 stories. So we're raising funding for that the best we can. But the 3D printer would be to make some components and sub-assemblies and other parts, and also some visual aids for lectures that I've been doing. And for videos, we're making a second DVD documentary. Our first one is about how the Great Pyramid was assembled, and our second one that is currently in production will be about how the Great Pyramid water pump operated, with computer-generated animations and video and that type of thing. So we have a lot of things going on. They can visit our website at thepump.org, see what we're all about, and hopefully they can, get involved with what we're doing.
Okay. Stephen, do you find that there is something to the Great Pyramids having, or the Great Pyramid having 8 sides?
Yes. Yeah, each side of the Great Pyramid is divided in half, in effect, from the apex down to the center of the base. And those sides are concave, if you will, bent in. And we've all seen the same pictures, photographs from the air, where on a certain day you can see that quite starkly, that effect. And it's only about 3 feet or so, but it is a additional design feature. We think that because the Great Pyramid was impounding water, that bent in to aid in strength. It put the stones in compression, if you will. So there's a technical reason for it, not that there's magic or that they worship something or to reflect the light, to represent Jesus or anything like that. But there was a technical feature. So imagine four hydroelectric dams backed up to one another, so they were like a square. And then, like the Hoover Dam is an analogy, if you will. It's concave, bent, if you will. And we think that during construction, it helped keep the stones in compression. And I have a whole chapter about that. A lot of people have an issue of, well, what about that? 8 sides, but a whole chapter in my book that describes just that. I mean, it's almost, as detailed as you would want. So, and then, of course, after the bonding agent was dried, if you will, then they were quite strong. So, and watertight. So that's a feature of the Great Pyramid that I give a technical explanation for especially during construction, to maintain strength.
Okay, so the 8 sides of the Great Pyramid is not pareidolia. That's actually real.
Yeah, that's real, direct physical evidence that exists, right now. So that helps.
Okay, yeah, I just wanted to make that distinction.
Yeah, no, it's measured, and in fact, it's been measured in the 18. I can't remember the exact year, but it has been measured, and everyone agrees on it. It's direct physical evidence. Now, to say why it's that way is an interpretation of evidence. That's completely different. An interpretation of evidence is not evidence.
Okay.
When somebody says, "Oh, there must have been a big ramp," that's not evidence. Somebody
Right.
says, "Well, those vents point up, so they point to stars." Everything points to stars. The antenna on my car points to stars. The passages in the Hoover Dam all point to stars. And the spikes on the crown of the Statue of Liberty points to stars. So, let's make up a big theory. The Empire State Building, the very top of it, points up to a star. Shazam! It's a correlation. It's nice. Occasionally on my Facebook page, I'll put up a link or two about websites that are dedicated to correlations that don't have causation. They're like the consumption of chocolate coincides with the murder rate in Illinois, and when it goes up, then the murder rate goes, and there's thousands of these, and it's hilarious because they are precise correlations, but they don't have any causation. So, but people will say, well, there's a relationship between the pyramids in China and the pyramids on the Giza Plateau. Well, that's nice, even if it's an absolute perfect correlation. If you don't have a causation, then it's just like pirates and global warming. That's legitimate academic research. But in religion, you can do that, And I will say this on the air, talking to someone that believes the Orion correlation theory is like talking to a Jehovah's Witness that comes to your door. They're hard to talk to. So, it is a religious belief, not legitimate academic research, and I have taken a lot of heat over that. It'd be easy just to say, "Oh yeah, it's a water pump," but then everything points to something, and you make up a correlation, and that was the original builders intended it. So, but no, I just don't want to do that.
But your information is already hammering away at the traditional view that the pyramid was a burial chamber.
Mm-hmm.
So it's that's kind of having to go by the wayside, and people still stick with it. So I see your point about these kind of beliefs do become like a religion.
They do. They do. It's too bad. And I am in favor of freedom of religion, and people can believe whatever they want to, and pick out a deity and bow down and worship it. But don't pass it off as legitimate academic research. Just admit that you're religious. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that at all. So it's strange. That's for sure. The biblical correlation theory is pretty much down the road, and there's a lot of people, not just me. I'm pretty vocal about it, obviously, but there's a lot of people that I network with that certainly question the Orion correlation theory. Sciences come and they go. There was a science called phrenology, which was about the correlation between the bumps on somebody's head and their psychological traits. You know, criminals had this type of a cranium, and we've all seen pictures of usually a white skull or head with markings on different areas and everything. And it was taught the first part of the 19th century and the first part of the 20th century, in colleges about phrenology, you know, and the psychological traits about the bumps on your head. But phrenology is a science that went away because it couldn't withstand the rigors of the scientific method. And Egyptology is considered a science, but it is in the same crisis that it cannot withstand the rigors of the scientific method. It can't move a heavy stone like the way they say it, like all books on Egyptology says it was done. They can't make a casing stone. Why don't they make a casing stone, and then that would shut me up? But instead, I can call Egyptologists storytellers because they don't engage in the scientific method. And the Orion correlation theory is suffering the same fate. They come up with these correlations every day. There's a new one, you know, between the man's anatomy and the Great Pyramid or whatever, and then Shazam. But it's not gonna fly when people understand that just having a correlation isn't good enough. So hopefully, the truth will come out, and things change. There's revolution in thought on a whole bunch of subjects. Certainly politics in the United States, ideas about renewable energy, and a whole bunch of other things. So I'm kind of rambling on, but we want to redevelop this pumping technology, which would be an alternative to using coal-fired power plants, nuclear power plants, even hydroelectric dams have adverse economic or environmental impact. So we're trying to develop an alternative. So that's my life quest that I'm involved in.
Do you have any idea why they were decommissioned?
Yes, I do. The Great Pyramid broke. The only damage inside the Great Pyramid that wasn't caused by mankind is the King's Chamber appears to have had some sort of an expansive force, like an explosion, inside the King's Chamber. And most people acknowledge that. The ceiling stones of the King's Chamber are broken, and some of the joints are spread apart a little bit between the wall stones. And we think that part of the mechanism inside the King's Chamber failed and caused essentially kind of an explosive or an expansive force inside the King's Chamber. And I discuss that in detail in my book. And so it kind of lends credence to, the evidence of the Great Pyramid can have a technical explanation. No matter what you think, the Great Pyramid is a technical building. It's a 45-story skyscraper that was built in ancient times using massive stones beyond the scope of human back muscles, especially to move a huge quantity in a production line manner, if you will, millions of stones. So it's a technical building, no matter what. The Orion correlation theory is absolutely prostrate in understanding how the Great Pyramid was built. They just approach it as a pre-existent artifact to be to divine meaning from, if you will. Ask someone who believes in the Orion correlation theory mystery religion about how the Great Pyramid was built, and the conversation is over. They can't even address it. Well, the the base of the Great Pyramid correlates with the North Pole or something. But how is the thing built? There's nothing wrong with that. I read a book about an aircraft carrier, talked about how it was built and how it was used. But the Orion correlation theory is ill-equipped to figure out how it was built.
Okay. Yeah, Stephen, and what's my next question? Do you think that the Great Pyramid, the Great Pyramid's design was transported around the world, or did some of these pyramids in Central America and Mexico develop independently of the building going on in Giza?
Well, certainly the Great Pyramid is different than all other pyramids with its design features, its precision, and virtually everything else. Many other pyramids in South America and Mexico, some are made of rubble, if you will, as opposed to stone. And so the different qualities of workmanship, certainly different designs, different angle of the sides, that type of thing. So I'm sure that they all had different purposes, and somewhere may have, even the mound builders in North America built, large, for lack of a better word, pyramid type mounds of structures. But in some may have been for religious purposes. But I don't know. I don't know if certainly they didn't make Great Pyramid water pumps all over the world. And like I say, different designs speak of different features. And there's no silver bullet to solve every issue of all the pyramids. So I wish there was, but it's hard. It's hard to say. There some say that there is. Oh, well, there must have been like a world culture that went all around, and then they built pyramids. But pyramid structure is just a logical method to build a building when you use masonry or sun-baked mud brick. You can't really make structures like the Empire State Building. You have to make it pretty solid, and a pyramid is structurally sound using specific materials that they had. So some people say, well, they had a similar goal of making a tall building using similar materials, so the design had some similarities, like a pyramid type of thing. So I don't know.
We've had a guest on a few times, Jason Gerald, talking about some of the log cabin features that were found inside the earthen mounds in the Kanawha Valley, and the drawings in the profile of the like Great Smith Mound and the Great Smith Mound, it does have resemblances to the King's Chamber. You just kind of have to wonder, is that just a coincidence, or could there have been some mechanization of a mound? I don't know. I'm just it's just interesting.
Yeah, it is interesting, and it seems like a stretch, but that a mound with wooden beams is somehow associated with a pyramid made out of stone with 70-ton stones part of it. So It's
Mm-hmm.
hard to say. People can read things into things. I know you said something about writings. The Great Pyramid has no writing inside of it, no formal writing, because it didn't need any. Most other buildings in the Valley of the Nile have writing all over them.
Mm-hmm.
So, especially buildings that are obviously for religious or ceremonial purposes or even administrative purposes have writing all over them, but the Great Pyramid doesn't. And I think that one reason is because it was a machine and you didn't need writing in it, just like there was no writing inside the engine of your car. Maybe a few part numbers, but don't need writing inside the cylinders of your car.
Well, that's
So
a good point too.
it's a distinctive between religious buildings and the Great Pyramid. Even the Aswan Dam has no, other than in the control rooms, no real formal ceremonial writing, and it has no ornamentation. It's just a industrial building. And I see the Giza Plateau more as an industrial park than as a religious center. So,
what do you think of the possibility of Atlantis had an influence on ancient Egypt and its high civilization?
possibly. I'm not against ideas of Atlantis. I'm not against high cultures that were maybe pre-flood, if you will, if you can say that these days, or that are pre-Ice Age. And I see that as a great possibility that some of the technology that ancient Egypt had was a legacy from earlier cultures. We've heard that from Graham Hancock and others. I don't see an issue with that, and that's a possibility. Certainly, there could have been a remnant of people that had some high technology and high understanding of physics that built the Great Pyramid, or the Great Pyramid could have been built pre-Ice Age. That's a possibility. By this culture before it was destroyed by a catastrophe. I'm certainly a catastrophist. So yeah, there could have been, and it would be nice to know, to have a time machine to go back. But we just have the direct physical evidence and logical techniques to study these ancient sites, as opposed to coming up with correlations and just saying, Shazam! It's a correlation, and then agreeing with it. I'm kind of getting known for making all these little memes that I put on the Facebook wall about making fun of both Egyptology and the Orion correlation theory. I have one that says, "What if a correlation without a causation was in alignment with a logical fallacy?" I think that one's very funny. So,
I like that.
but I just ask people to review my research. Don't just say, "Oh, it can't be done. There's no water on the Giza Plateau." Well, Herodotus said that the Great Pyramid looked like an island surrounded by water. Isn't that interesting?
And
Yeah, look it up.
yeah,
Histories, Book 2.
yeah, the Nile isn't too far away, but the Mediterranean Ocean is still quite a few miles to the north. So if Herodotus is saying it's surrounded by water, it almost has to be man-made.
It would be man-made. The Great Pyramid had a wall around it, about 30 feet tall. That wall existed up until the middle of the 18th century, when the savants from Napoleon's, going over there to Egypt, the savants, the early pictures drew that wall around the Great Pyramid. We think that wall impounded water. So if there's a wall around the Great Pyramid that had water in it, the Great Pyramid would look like an island surrounded by water, just as Herodotus said.
Huh. Okay. So, let's see what.
I think that the builders of the Great Pyramid were geniuses, and they had a profound understanding of the laws of physics and the natural world. And they were from that understanding, I think that they knew things that we didn't know. They developed technologies to cut stone. They developed technologies to move stone, 21st century technology, which is waterlogs. And they had a goal, and that goal was, we want full bellies, and we want our kids to eat. So they built this great big giant structure, pumped water for irrigation, but also for science projects, for powering machinery, to create compressed air using water, which I talk about in my book, and also to use the pumped water to create static electricity, high voltage, for a number of purposes. So the builders were geniuses. They weren't interested in a cult for the dead. They weren't interested in a cult for correlations to tell us something. They were interested in their own prosperity. And they built a water pump that didn't pollute. It was, believe it or not, self-powered, just like a hydroelectric dam is. And they bettered their lives. And our foundation is dedicated to rebuilding that ancient technology using modern tools, and hopefully get us off our addiction of oil.
Yeah, I have to agree with that, Stephen. We're down to about 7 minutes left. And get a couple more quick questions. Do you have a theory on the missing capstone?
Yes. There are some early writers, like ancient Greece. I believe one of them mentioned a capstone. But if there was a capstone, our website in our video series describes how it was brought all the way up to the top of the Great Pyramid and set in place. No one knows what the capstone was made of. When people tell you that they know what the capstone was made of, then run away, because it's not known. There is no direct physical evidence. So they just make up something like it was electrum or gold. So the Great Pyramid could be a weapon or something like that. No. If there's no direct physical evidence to indicate there was one or was not one. If there was one, I show in our video series how it was moved and set in place.
So, okay, that answers a few personal questions I had. Do you think there could have been? We're dealing with an early culture doing some very high tech engineering.
Yes.
Do you think that there was any possibility of alien influence as an extraterrestrial?
A lot of people say that there was, and there's a lot of people that think that that's a possibility. And the reason why is because the Great Pyramid is like an out-of-place artifact. It is from ancient times, from what we're told is an agrarian society, but it exhibits phenomenally high technology, so high that the experts, Egyptologists, are completely incapable of even creating a component of the Great Pyramid, let alone moving the stones the way they say it was done. So people say, well, it must have been ancient technology. That's a possibility, actually. But what about this? What if in the builders of the Great Pyramid had geniuses like a Nikola Tesla or a Victor Schauberger, the guy that was into vortexes and whirlpools and that type of thing? What if there was a couple of guys like that? And what if they developed a stone cutting method? And then somebody else figured out water locks. And then another guy figured out they could use water in a whirlpool to pump water. And then they built the Great Pyramid, and everybody's kids were able to eat. So that's a couple of possibilities, but I don't rule it out. I just think that there was some genius involved, either extraterrestrial technology or people that were brilliant.
Okay, and
fair enough.
Yeah, it is. As long as it, I'm mainly interested in an honest answer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, somebody was a genius. Where they came from, I don't know.
You
But
find
they
them
were
in.
sure,
Yeah,
whoever built it were smarter than the Egyptologists. I can tell you that.
Well, you find geniuses and throughout all kinds of cultures. Einstein or Leonardo. I don't see why Egypt wouldn't produce, a very brilliant person.
Oh, absolutely. One or a couple, three, maybe 100. Who knows? One guy might have been a genius in music. Another would have been a genius in organization. Another guy was a genius in stone cutting. Developed a technology. So, and I think all of it was done on a production line basis. The moving of the stones, the cutting of the stones, everything. So it's fast.
Well, we're getting down to the last couple of minutes, and I want to make sure everybody knows how to find your books.
Okay, they're on Amazon.com, or you can go to our website, Lost Technologies of the Great Pyramid and the Great Pyramid Prosperity Machine. They're in softcover or ebook format. You can also contact us through our website at thepump.org. And we have email, info@thepump.org. We also have a dedicated phone line here at our foundation. You can call 24 hours a day, 541-824-0032, and visit our website, like us on Facebook, and if you have any questions, contact us. That's what we're here for. And we take donations.
All right. Well, thanks, Stephen. That everyone, that was Stephen Myers on an Open Canvas tonight. That was really a lot of fun, informative, and please come back. That was a quick 2 hours.
It sure was. Y'all have a good evening.
Well, thanks
Next week.
Thanks to the both of you. It was a great